Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us today for our last Give STL Day training of 2023. This is how to work with the St. Louis Community Foundation. Very excited to have here with me three of my wonderful colleagues: Elizabeth George, Director of Community Investment; Nikki Martinez, Community Investment Manager; and Emily Seiple, Community Investment Associate. So today's meeting is going to be recorded. That recording is going to be available on the Give STL Day website. We are going to have a Q&A session after the training, so please feel free to drop those in the chat, and I will let my wonderful colleagues take it away.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for being with us today. I'm Elizabeth George, as Emily said, and I'm the Director of Community Investment here at the St. Louis Community Foundation. I've been with us for 5 years and a little bit now, and I think working with the nonprofits is probably one of the greatest joys of my job. So we're excited to share today with you all. I'll let Nikki and Emily each introduce themselves as well.
Hi, I'm Nikki Martinez. I'm the Community Investment Officer here at the St. Louis Community Foundation, and I'm super excited to have everyone here today.
Again, my name is Emily Seiple. There are 3 Emilys at our office. We'll always try to make sure you get to the right one. And I've been here a little over about a year and a half. Yeah, looking forward to connecting with all of you.
So wonderful. So now that you have met us, we want to see who's with us today. And so if in the chat, you could share, please, your name, your organization, and one question you hope will be answered today. And we will be tracking the questions in the chat, and we hope that anything that we don't get to during the presentation, we'll be able to answer in the Q&A session at the end. And of course, as we go through, we will continue to check the chat. So throw anything that comes in the chat as you go. So thanks so much. And I'm seeing the names come in, and it's wonderful to see old friends and new friends. So welcome. Okay, so as you are doing that, we do always like to start with the mission of the St. Louis Community Foundation as we try to ground everything that we do in that mission. Our mission is to inspire purposeful philanthropy that connects community and donors to build and preserve a more equitable and vibrant region now and forever. And to me, the critical words, I mean, there are lots of critical words, but the critical words in there is the connection between community and donors. It's how we inspire that purposeful philanthropy through that connection to make sure that our community has access to donors and our donors have that understanding of community needs, community efforts, and the nonprofits that make up our community as they are making their giving decisions or their philanthropic decisions. We also focus deeply on the equitable and vibrant region as a community foundation. That is core to the work that we do. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we stand for and where we are going. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Nikki, who will talk a little bit about how we work.
Good morning. I am excited to talk to you about a little bit more about how the Community Foundation works and how we're made up, and what sort of entry points look like for a lot of people. So essentially what the Community Foundation is, we are just a big group of funds, charitable funds, that money that has been set aside by various parties for charitable purposes. And at this point, we have well over 800 funds, including donor advised funds, designated funds, discretionary funds, field of interest, scholarships, and agency endowment funds. I will not go into the details of all of those different types of funds, but know that they are all meant for charitable purposes. All of the funding that goes into those, again, from different types of people, and we'll talk a little bit about who our donors are in a second. And those funds are all meant for charitable purposes, but and are used in different types of ways. And we're very excited to be a hub of those types of funds. Next slide. So who do we support? So we have all sorts of people that we work with. We love to say there's a cast of characters, and we just love every single one of them. And they're all committed to philanthropy, and most of the region here in St. Louis. And that includes our individual donors, companies and corporations that we support, private and family foundations, but also the nonprofits and the community initiatives that we are a part of. And that includes our other philanthropic partners around town. We tend to work with a bigger spectrum of donors and some of those philanthropic partners around town, but we still do that sort of grant making and love to have their input as well. Next slide. So we like to say that our donors are very much on a continuum. They're not all the same. They all look very, very different, and we love that we're able to respond to the type of donor that comes to us for their giving. And we also like to say in some cases, like, our donors will really evolve, along the spectrum, as individuals, which is really fun to see. They go from giving to the same organizations year after year to really diving a lot deeper into what that giving looks like, what that impact looks like, and varying that grant making and asking more questions about. But of course, we are here to serve our donors in the best way possible that works for them. So we love our DIY donors that, again, do their gifts annually to the organizations that they support, and really, really appreciate and believe in those missions. They're very low communication, and we communicate with them as we need to, and we don't bother them otherwise. We have a broad spectrum of anonymous donors, people that really are very, very generous, but want to keep their gifts very much anonymous, and we consider ourselves the gatekeepers in those respects, and take that very seriously. And then, of course, we have very, our complex donors that we have a lot of communication with. We have a lot of education with, and conversations around what their grant making looks like. And in some cases, that might look like a competitive or responsive grant making process. Next slide, please. We also work with corporate donors. We like to say we really, really, really enjoy working with corporate donors because in a lot of cases that can be structured very differently, where we get to work with various people at that company or corporation. In some cases, they're doing philanthropic gifts in the name of the business, things that they like to support year after year. In some cases, they're using our employee care fund programming. We really appreciate that we're able to.
Sorry.
We really appreciate that we're able to structure those types of gifts for individuals through their employers, through those employee care funds. And then we also have employee committee led giving, which we have done some of that work as a community investment team. And we really, really enjoy that work because I think it really gives employees from companies around town this opportunity to dive into philanthropy. And I think that our job is just one of the best jobs in the world. I love to learn about nonprofits. I love to learn about what's happening in the community around me. And we get to give a little slice of that to some of the employees that are the corporations that we work with. And that's been a lot of fun. Next slide. We also work with private and family foundations. These are interesting because for the community foundation, we don't hold those funds like we would with those other donors. This is not a donor advised fund. It is not a scholarship. These are individual private or family foundations that exist on their own, and we essentially are their consultants. And we provide all of the services that they need to run their office. And that looks, again, very different based on the private or family foundation. The Pettis Foundation is longstanding in this community. They also give in Hawaii, and they give in the areas of workforce development and education, and are very active despite not living here in St. Louis and finding ways to stay on top of what is happening in St. Louis. The Burgess Family Foundation, also a longstanding St. Louis family that is very philanthropic, giving in the areas of culture. not sure where I got muted, but cultural arts, our heroes, which includes first responders and veterans. I'm blanking all of a sudden. Sorry.
STEM, youth
STEM preparedness and youth empowerment. I'm like two of the biggest ones, youth empowerment and STEM preparedness. I'm so sorry. I was thrown off a little bit. And of course, the Episcopal Presbyterian Health Trust that gives within the city of St. Louis and the sort of surrounding areas in the counties around health access. And we just finished a new LOI process for that just recently. Our approach to community is something we take really seriously on our whole staff, but specifically the community investment team, because we consider ourselves the eyes and ears of what's happening in St. Louis, and very often are the ones that are charged with going out in the community and bringing information back to the staff as a whole. And we take that job very seriously. We also have the most fun because we get to go on site visits and really get to see the community. But as we're doing that, we really think about equity. Equity is such a priority for us in all aspects of our giving, right down to putting together an application. You know, we always joke that we struggle with the number of characters that we use, the limits on our applications, but we really think about that in an equity, from an equity standpoint. Does everyone have enough space to tell their story? And would we be giving more priority to somebody that could tell their story much more quickly? And, you know, all of those sorts of things, we think about these things so deeply within our grant making and within the work that we do every single day. We focus here on regional issues. Obviously, if we have donors that want to look into issues outside of St. Louis, say in response to something that's happening in the world, or something that they resonates with them, we will absolutely help them on that journey. But our expertise lies in the St. Louis community and in the conversations that we have with all of you that are on the chat today. Those are really important. We want to know what's happening in our own backyards. And again, building those relationships, we think those are so important. I always love to see everybody on these webinars because it's like, oh, my friends are here. And it's kind of great to see everybody and be able to go to events and say the same thing, like all of our nonprofit friends are here, and really have those relationships where people know that they can contact us and that we can again be the eyes and ears of the community. And then again, centering community voice. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when on the next slide when we talk about our pooled and partnership funds, because that can be very important. Next slide. So over the years, our team has worked on pooled and partnership funds, various things that have popped up around the community that have been really either, you know, they need to live at the St. Louis Community Foundation, or we feel like we're the best folks to set the table. I think a really good example of that is the COVID-19 Regional Response Fund. As we know, things were happening very quickly in the early days of the pandemic, and I think that it's something that we knew that we could do in terms of creating a fund and having a place where donors could come and where nonprofits could come to know that we were a trusted grant maker. So that has been such a joy to be able to do that. But in all of these processes, the most important thing I think to talk about is how we center community voice. In every single one of these processes, we had both funders, individuals, and private and family foundations that contributed to these funds contribute their voices, but also community members, nonprofit professionals, for-profit professionals, people from all walks of life, so that we could really center that voice and know what's happening in the community, so that as we're distributing these funds, how important that is.
Want me to take this one, Nikki?
Oh, no, sorry, I was just reading your message. The partnerships and initiatives, these are also super important to the work that we do. We have a lot of different funds that we work with partners around the community, whether those be government, other nonprofit organizations, and other organizations that know that the Community Foundation can be a great place to hold those funds and help administer those funds so that they can achieve whatever charitable purposes that they hope to achieve. The Financial Health Fund is looking for innovative ways to address systematic barriers to financial health for low-income households, including financial education, IDAs, and participants in fintech. That is a partnership that we're really, really excited about. The digital divide is something that kind of sprang out of COVID. We partnered with another nonprofit organization that was able to help gather data around the community, to find out where those divides exist as far as our connection to digital access, whether you have the actual access, that digital, whether you have internet, whether you have the devices that you need, and whether or not you have the education that you need to run those devices and access all the things that are happening now in that digital world. The Regional Response Fund is really, really close to home for us because that also sprang out of COVID. And it really is looking at how St. Louis responds to various emergencies and things that happen and spring up in our community. How do we respond as a nonprofit community and as neighbors and as friends to the needs of the various people that are popping up? And the regional response team has really adapted itself over time from COVID to looking at more long-term emergency response. And we're really excited to be working with them. And finally, the Economic Development and Transformation Fund. I don't know if you want to talk about this one really quickly, Elizabeth. I know this one's really exciting and is pretty new to our family of funds.
Yes, so Mayor Jones and the head of the St. Louis Development Corporation, Neil Richardson, on March 14th, on STL Day, as we like to say, announced the Economic Accelerator, which is put in place to move forward the mayor's Economic Justice Action Plan. And the Accelerator has three different sort of buckets of funding to move forward the Economic Justice Action Plan. The first is public dollars. So some of that is our ARPA dollars, some of that is other public funding, whether it's federal, state, or local, that will be put forward to economic development in our community or in our city. The second will be sort of more those development dollars, real estate development and other corporate dollars that will come into the community to build out various and sundry development opportunities. And the third is the Economic Development and Transformation Fund, which is which we are housing here to hold philanthropic dollars that will come in to support anything from the Northside Economic Empowerment Center through to if there is a particular effort or initiative that that is being led by nonprofits that either donors, whether that's institutional donors or individual donors, or the city wants to use philanthropic dollars to support. So anyway, we're pretty darn excited about it and enjoying greatly working with the city on this wonderful effort.
And finally, this is just a list of the things that we participate in around this community, our partnerships and coalition building efforts. And I think this is really where our team divides and conquers so well, because we really get to be out in the community, being at various tables and really finding things that resonate with us personally, but knowing the things that are really resonating around the community as well. So these are just a tidbit of those. So, and I will turn it over to Emily for the remaining information.
Awesome. I'm going to talk a little more specifically about our competitive grant programs and just what that means for engagement with our team, because I know that is what several of the questions are about. Wait for the slide to change. Okay, so one of the questions that I noted in the chat, I believe from Nancy at Covenant House, was asking if all grants or if all gifts made through the community foundation are from donors through donor advised funds. And Nikki just walked through a number of other funds that exist here. Some of those have their own competitive grant making process, like the COVID fund. That was before my time. That was a whirlwind of grant making. And so any of those funds can mean that's how our name could end up at your door as a nonprofit with funding in connection to some philanthropic mission. But many of our assets are in donor advised funds. So it's likely that that's a way that you are interacting with us. And that does make interacting with us kind of a unique experience. Sometimes when I'm talking with nonprofits, I can say it feels like a hurry up and wait because you've engaged with us, you've told us about your programs, but we may not get to connect with a donor who is working in that area several months from that time. So it's a really great question. And we do in fact have a new team member who is really engaged and working a lot with the folks who hold donor advised funds. And so if there are any specific questions you have about what does it mean when that comes, we'd be happy to pass on that question. But anyways, these donor advised funds, Nikki already mentioned this as well, they have a great deal of autonomy. They're not typically asking you to fill out an application. You might not even know anything's coming. But because we have a knowledge of what's happening in the community through our other grant programs, through communication with you, we're able to try to, as much as possible, ensure that donors know about work that's happening here. Again, depends a lot on them and how much communication they want, but that's what this left side of the screen is about. We try to provide as much information to them as possible when we are asked, and those are really exciting conversations for us because we see your faces, hear from you in emails, have conversations with you, read your grant applications, and know how much great work is happening. And again, that comes through a lot of our competitive grant programs. And so these are those private and family foundations. Again, we don't have their funds, but we are their back office. Those pooled funds, such as the Welcome Fund, such as the COVID Fund. And there are a few donor advised fund holders who have put a competitive grant process together, identified some priorities so that they could get a better sense of that work and that's happening in the community and actually take in applications. And so again, you'll see in the next little icon, they do require an application, evaluation process, and some kind of follow-up reporting. And each of those are customized based on what that board or donor is looking to fund. And those are all on our website. And we do always welcome questions about those because a lot of them are invitation only. And I will, the next slide will outline number one, where, so this is just for some comedic relief. So those direct grant recommendations coming from the donor advised fund holders, again, that's really them saying, here's where I am excited and want to invest in the community. And the competitive grant making process means that we're dealing with board meetings and different decision-making processes, different timelines, reading applications, getting materials out. So it's a more involved process, but really exciting work happens both ways. And sometimes finding out where that grant information can be a little tricky if you aren't super familiar with our website. And so we just wanted to make sure you have it. I personally have a bookmark for this because I get tired of clicking through the thing. So if this is helpful, you can put this on your page, and then this is the directions. You go to nonprofits, apply for a grant, learn more, and then you can scroll down and see the different programs that we have. And I will talk about this later, but the best way to stay on top of things is to sign up for our newsletter. But this is always there for you. And so if you do that and you scroll down, you'll see these programs. The Charles Foundation is one that that has the goal of serving older adults in South City. It came from the Charles Home. If any of you are familiar with the role that formerly played in our community. And that giving cycle is once a year and it will open in September. The next two are some of those unique ones we mentioned where it's two different donor advised fund groups that put together a process. And so the Gateway Regional Environmental Fund is laser focused on carbon reduction. They will not be doing an open process in 2023, but are actively engaged in that space. So again, you are always you can always check in with us. We're always happy to share those updates because sometimes those process timelines can change. And the Guy and Judy Schwartz Jaffe Charitable Fund is focused on job creation, entrepreneurship, and cultural arts. And we are expecting to see that process open at the later half of this year. And then kind of a unique one under our umbrella is the Spirit of St. Louis Women's Fund, and that's a giving circle. And we really support them in using online software. Nikki was really engaged in bringing all of their process online, which is exciting for everyone. But they will have one grant making cycle in the fall, and that does have an LOI process, and that will open in September. And so we don't do any of that review. That's one example of how we kind of do what they need, but their volunteers review all of those applications. All right, next slide. And then Nikki did touch on the priority areas for these foundations, but we are involved in supporting the boards and their decision making, building connections with the nonprofits, doing some of that outreach. I'm sure we saw a lot of your faces when we did some virtual town halls around the new Episcopal Presbyterian Health Trust process. And we talked to many of you throughout that process as there was a new conversational component. And so each of these, if there are any changes, that will be either on our website, newsletter. We'll do our best to make sure that you're aware and up to date on what these processes look like. Pettis and the Pettis Foundation, I know that we get a lot of inquiries around that as it's an invitation only process. And so they also use site visits to really engage and kind of decide who they're interested in inviting and to complete an application for funding. And so I'll go over how you can engage with our team, but that's an example of you might reach out to us and then we'll kind of explain what that process looks like or where they are in their process. And you might hear back from us many months later, just because theirs is very relational and they're only here certain times of the year. Go to next slide. I guess I could touch on, sorry, I'll go back really quick. Thanks, Elizabeth. I think we have shared this a couple different times in various either emails with you all or other webinars like this, but the Burgess Family Foundation does have a new CEO, relatively new, Kelly Pollack. We do work closely with her, and they also have an LOI process as well, which can be found on their website. We are always happy to field questions and kind of connect you to the right point in their process too, but wanted to throw that out there. All right, now you can go to the next slide. These are other ways that we engage with the nonprofit community and provide support. Give STL Day is a great example, though our team is not the champion of that. Emily Bauman is amazing, and she has really put together fantastic trainings, as well as Neosha Franklin, who also did a ton to build up this day. So we're really happy that you're here and engaging with the Give STL Day activities. And we are really excited for our 10th year and seeing donations flow in for all of you. Fiscal sponsorships, that's another way that we support really great work in the community that might need a nonprofit home for a while. And the fiscal sponsorships that we typically take on have equity as central to what they're doing, and usually a regional or kind of system-wide scope of their work. Our newsletter, again, I would strongly encourage you to sign up for that if you haven't. If you haven't yet, just from what I have walked through, we don't have a huge number of grant programs, and there's a lot of work that isn't necessarily represented in those priorities, but our newsletter will update you on anything new that comes out. If there's a new community initiative that we're a part of or anything new that opens up, our newsletter is where that information will certainly be. And then as we also share funding opportunities from our friends. There are many other foundations in the community, and Emily Bauman and our team work closely to make sure that those are included so that you're aware of what's happening and what might fit your work and support your work. And some of that also takes place on social media, and social media is sometimes a a great space for sharing stories and sharing work. And that is the other Emily, and she's wonderful. Nonprofit endowments is just another way that we can open a fund that supports nonprofit goals. So able to establish that with us, and just another fundraising structure for them to keep their work going in a sustainable manner. And then trainings are especially concentrated around the Give STL Day time, but our team does do a few others throughout the year. And where would you learn about that? In the newsletter. So we hope that you stay in touch with us in many ways. Next slide. Okay. So engaging with our team can look a number of different ways. One really great way, it might feel strange if you've never done it before, but you can send an email that really just shares what your nonprofit mission is, your story. If there are any major needs, sometimes folks reach out if there's a capital campaign or a program that has shifted, just whatever your needs are, let us know. It kind of helps it helps us tell your story and how someone could invest. And then additionally, we never ask you to create materials for us, but if you have a one-pager or just some other kind of marketing material that really captures your work, you can send that to us as well. And that makes it easier for us to be communicating with the rest of our team about your work. And similarly, that could be just a general introduction if you have a new executive director, or if you do have a question about one of the specific programs that you've seen on our website or heard me talk about today. That's a great reason to send an email as well. Then we know exactly what you're interested in and how to give you feedback or instructions for what a next step would be. We also can learn about your work or hear about an update with virtual calls. We've moved a lot to virtual just because we are trying to connect with so many of you. And I'm going to chat about this a bit more in the next slide. Those will happen more at certain times of the year. And that's so we are kind of making the best use of our team's time and also connecting with you when it most makes sense based on what those different grant programs timelines are. It might feel strange to reach out and meet with us in a couple months from when you reached out, but it's truly something that we do to match up when we hear about your work and what's most kind of updated and relevant in connection to the programs that we are working with and the boards we're working with. I've already highlighted this, but sign up for our newsletter to learn about our opportunities as they come up and as the deadlines approach for different ones, and then also learning about the other grant opportunities in the community. And lastly, you're doing it, participate and Give STL Day. Again, we're very excited to celebrate so many great nonprofits this year. And so what it will look like soon, there's still some internal pieces that we're working out, but scheduling with our team will happen a lot through the booking system, which is if you use Calendly or some other calendar services, it will be very similar. And if you participated in the Episcopal Presbyterian Health Trust LOI process recently in the past couple of months, this is the same system that was used then. And you'll just be able to see what times our team is available and directly go and find out, click whatever works with your schedule and be able to book a meeting with us. And again, the availability of our team will kind of fluctuate, and that will correspond to the purpose of the meeting. And so for general introductions or updates about a project or your staff team, there will be more options available in the first and third quarter of the year. So especially in January and February and June and July. And this is so that when we're getting kind of that bigger scope of hearing from you and engaging with you, it'll match up better with the grant processes that are actually open, so that we're getting updates at the best time. And this is when our team will just have the most availability. So kind of trying to match all of the things for a more streamlined information flow. And then grant program inquiry. So if hearing from this list of programs, or you go to the website and you're kind of wondering about your fit with any of those programs, availability for those kind of chats will also be based around that program specific timeline. So one example, again, if you were part of the Episcopal Presbyterian Health Trust process. We had, I think, 40 conversations in the month of March, because that's what that looks like for that process. And so if you reached out for a meeting in March for something else, there was less time available because our team's really focused on that one piece, but we'll make sure that availability matches up with whatever the program is. Yeah. We are happy to take more questions.
So there was one question in the chat about how we keep our donors informed about our nonprofit's work. And I'm going to take on how we share information internally. And then Emily Bauman is going to talk about how we communicate with our donors. So internally, as Emily and Nikki described, we are working, the community investment team is primarily externally facing with nonprofits and dealing with the competitive grants and the corporate and private family foundations. Our donor services team works primarily with the donor advised funds. And so as we are meeting with nonprofits, we keep lists of who we've met with and make those public to everyone on our internal team. And then when you send us those materials that Emily talked about, we will post those in every nonprofit that has registered with us has a file. And so we post those into your file. And then our donor services team can say, if somebody is interested in learning about a particular nonprofit, or if somebody wants to know about who's out there in early education, our donor services team can run a report or look up that particular organization. And yes, we do we include Metro East area in making funds available? Yes, we do. And Nikki is our Metro East representative on the community investment team, and she would never let us forget our East neighbors. So Emily B., do you want to take on talking about our communication, our sort of structured communication with donors?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I think you said it really well. So kind of just to add and complement to what you said, Elizabeth, our team does do a really great job sharing knowledge internally. We have lots of meetings. We have an all-staff meeting every week, and we're all constantly bouncing ideas and information off of each other. I get a lot of that as the communications person, and it's a lot of fun to always know what cool things you all are up to in community. And then, as Elizabeth said, our donor services team does a spectacular job of making recommendations to our fund holders based on their areas of interest and their charitable intent. Some donors know what they want to give to, and they don't need those recommendations, but that is part of our exceptional service here, is being able to make those specific recommendations to our fund holders. So again, really helps to know what you all are up to. Depending on which of our email distribution lists you're on, you might have gotten some of our crisis communications that we've sent out around recent tornadoes and other natural disasters, such as the earthquakes and floods that happened last year, that kind of thing. So we do send those out whenever there is something going on, around the country and around the world that we want to inform our fund holders of, causes that they can support. And then really a primary source of information for our audiences is our blog. We have a lot of different stories, huge areas of focus, very broad range there that they can go to get information. And then we do share those posts on social media. So again, another source of information for them. So I hope that's helpful.
What other questions do you all have? You can come off mute and ask, or you can throw them in the chat. Or somebody asked about how do you register with the Community Foundation? Well, Give STLJ is your first step, because anytime we are sending any funds out, you have to have a file with us. So that's a great first step. Also, if you contact somebody on the community investment team for a meeting or just to introduce yourselves by email. Anytime we get information on a nonprofit that we're not aware of, we will make sure that we set up a file for you in our system. But again, if you have ever received any kind of funding from the Community Foundation, you're already in our system.
I'm gonna put the link for the newsletter into, because sometimes, you know, various people within your organization might want to also get our information and might not be the, you know, the main contact for the other things. So, you know, it's always helpful to have this.
Right. So we've now had a couple of questions about, do we work with the Metro East community in Illinois? And yes, the answer is yes, we do. And we do that in a couple of different ways. One, we have donors that give in Illinois. And then anytime we are looking at one of our regional initiatives, like the COVID Fund, a little lesser degree with the Welcome Fund, you know, the Black Communities Investment Initiative, some of those that Nikki put up, we always make sure that we are including our neighbors on the eastern side of the Mississippi River. Technically, we work in a 16-county area, 8 in Missouri, 8 in Illinois, but reality is we mostly work in about 6 or 7 counties, 4 in Missouri and 2 or 3 in Illinois. So is there a link for giving for us to post in its social media? Emily B?
I'm assuming what you mean is if there is a link that you can post that will send people directly to your Give Us TL Day profile, and that is yes, that is something that you self-identify when you register. So if you log in to your account and go to overview, you'll be able to grab that unique URL. And I was DM'd a question, does the Spirit of St. Louis Fund still have an organization budget limit of less than $1.5 million? The answer is yes. Nikki, that's much more your area of expertise than mine. Do you have anything to add?
No, they still have that limit. They do prefer to fund smaller organizations in that respect. And are as far as I know, for 2024, they're going to stick with those. Of course, they can obviously make changes. I don't foresee that happening, but I envision that staying.
Oh, did I just hear somebody? If someone just came off mute, feel free to keep talking.
Yep, I think the person went back on mute. So okay, other questions? There was somebody who had put in the chat that they were interested in learning more about partnerships and collaborations. You know, certainly if you are looking for someone to work with on a particular project and you want to know who's working in whether it's a place-based area, you know, a particular neighborhood, or whether it's working along a continuum in a particular area like early childhood or mental health or the environment, you know, certainly reach out to us and we will be more than happy to let you know who we know is working in those areas. You know, we don't have any program currently that is set up to structure collaboration for nonprofits. However, some of our funding mechanisms, like the Episcopal Presbyterian Health Trust, really honors collaborations among nonprofits. So they're not forced, but they are certainly honored. One of our our philanthropic partners, Regions Bank, has a whole collaboration program and process that they sort of kicked off a couple of weeks ago with their annual morning breakfast, where they bring nonprofits together, break them out into smaller groups, trying to spark collaboration. But that's the only funder I know that's actually sort of actively working to get collaborations together. There are many, you know, I think all of our funding partners appreciate collaborations and partnerships, if that made any sense. Other thoughts, other questions? Come on, guys, don't be shy.
And I do apologize. I know that this training was scheduled for an hour and a half, but the team has been kind enough to do the quick version today to give us all back a good portion of our morning. So. Okay, well, if there aren't any further questions, we can go ahead and wrap this up. As I mentioned at the beginning, this training has been recorded. We will be posting the link to the Give Us Dale Day website on the trainings page just as soon as it processes on YouTube. I'll also include the PDF of this presentation so you can look at one or both, however you wish. And we are all always, here and happy to help with anything that you need. So anybody have anything else to add?
We could stay on for a bit longer if you want to stop the recording, and we could just stay in case, I don't know, if someone just,
Yeah,
there's too many people, that's their question.
Okay.
I don't know. Does that work for you, Emily?
Yeah, that absolutely works. I will go ahead and do that.